Hello, students. How are you all? Welcome back to history class. So, last class we had stopped at controlling workers. You all saw how slave culture or slavery was present, and you all also saw how debt contracts were a type of agreements between private employees and their workers. In these debt contracts, it was claimed that the employees were in debt to their employers, and as a result, they were under a tighter control. A large number of families went into debt bondage just in order to survive. We also saw the example of the Great Jewish Revolt of 66, where the revolutionaries have destroyed the moneylenders' bonds to win popular support. The next topic is social hierarchies. Let's try and get a sense of the social structures of the empire. Tacitus, he described the leading social groups of the early empire as senators, who were the leading members of the equestrian class, the respectable section of the people, those attached to the great houses, and then the unkempt lower class, who were addicted to the circus and theatrical displays. And finally came the slaves. In the early 3rd century, when the Senate numbered around 1,000, that is approximately half of all the senators still came from Italian families. And by the late empire, which starts with the reign of Constantine I, that is the early part of 4th century, the two groups had merged into a unified, expanded aristocracy, and at least half of all the families were of African or Eastern origin. This late Roman aristocracy was enormously wealthy, but in many ways it was less powerful than the purely military elites who came almost entirely from non-aristocratic backgrounds. The middle class consisted of a considerable mass of people connected with imperial services in the bureaucracy and army. They were more prosperous merchants and farmers who had many provinces in the east. Tacitus described this respectable middle class as clients of the great senatorial houses. Now it was chiefly government service and dependence on the state that sustained many of these families. Below them were the vast mass of lower caste, collectively known as humilores. That means lower humans. They comprise a rural labor force of which many were permanently employed on the large estates. Workers in the industrial mining establishments, migrant workers who supplied much of the labor for the grain and olive harvest and for building industry, self-employed artisans who were better fed than wage workers, a large mass of casual laborers, especially in the big cities, and of course the many thousands of slaves that were still found all over the Western Empire in particular. According to historian Olympiodorus, one writer of the early 5th century, who was also an ambassador, tells us that aristocracy based in the city of Rome drew annual incomes up to 4,000 libytes of gold from their estates. 4,000 pounds of gold from their estates, not counting the produce that they consumed directly. The monetary system of the late empire broke with the silver based currencies for the first 3 centuries because the Spanish silver mines were exhausted and the government ran out of sufficient stocks of metal to support a stable coinage in silver. So the monetary system broke because there was no silver left, the mines were exhausted, and the government did not have enough metal to support a silver coin. Constantine founded the new monetary system on gold as there was vast amount of this in the circulation throughout the late antiquity. The late Roman bureaucracy, both higher and middle echelons, was a comparatively affluent group because it drew much of its salary in gold and invested much of this in buying up assets like land. There was, of course, a great deal of corruption, especially in the judicial system and in the administration of military supplies. The extortion of higher bureaucracy and the greed of the provisional governors were proverbial. But government intervened repeatedly to curb these forms of corruption. We only know about them because of the laws that had that were brought in to put an end to this. Because historians and other members denounced such practices. This element of criticism is a remarkable feature of the classical world. The Roman state was an authoritarian regime, meaning dissent was rarely tolerated and government usually responded to protest with violence, especially in the cities of the East, where people were often fearless in making fun of the emperors. Strong tradition of Roman law had emerged by the 4th century, and this acted as a brake on even the most fearsome emperors. Emperors were not free to do whatever they liked, and the law was actively used to protect civil rights. In the later 4th century, hence, it was possible for the powerful bishops like Ambrose to confront equally powerful emperors when they were excessively harsh or repressive in their handling of the civilian population. There's a small paragraph which is interesting in your textbooks on page 71, which speaks about the incomes of the Roman aristocracy that I told you was 4,000 pounds of gold without counting the produce that they consumed. Each of the great houses of Rome contained within themselves a medium-sized city, a hippodrome, fora, temples, fountains, and different kinds of baths. Many of the Roman households received an income of 4,000 pounds of gold per year from their properties. And this does not include the grain, the wine, and other produce, which, if sold, could have easily amounted to one third of that income of gold. The income of the households at Rome of the second class was 1,000 or 1,500 pounds of gold. So this is how rich the Romans were. So today I want to see a small video because we've not seen a video for very long. Today we will see a small video on the Roman Empire. Okay, so we'll see something that will sum up all the things we have learned up till now.
The story of ancient Rome is a story of evolution, of how a civilization's ability to adapt and dominate can lead to its survival for over 1,000 years. Rome began as a small village on central Italy's Tiber River. In the coming centuries, it grew into an empire that stretched from the North Atlantic all the way to the Persian Gulf. During this transformation, Rome displayed a political, military, and cultural prowess that enabled it to become a superpower and helped shape what would become known as Western civilization. The lifespan of ancient Rome can be divided into three major periods: the regal, the republican, and the imperial. During the regal period, Rome was monarchical and ruled by a succession of about 7 kings. Rome's first king, according to legend, was a man named Romulus. He and his twin brother Remus are said to have founded Rome in 753 BC. In 509 BC, Rome adopted a republican system of governance in which the state was primarily ruled by 2 annually elected representatives called praetors, who were later called consuls. One of them became a famous general and dictator, Julius Caesar. The imperial period followed. It was characterized by the rise of the Roman Empire and notorious leaders such as Octavian, Rome's first emperor, who ushered in an era of peace, and Nero, who, some scholars believe, was Rome's cruelest emperor. Rome's focus and pride in its military was vital to the civilization's growth, and this ethos was evident as early as the regal period, when Rome was only a small village. Still, Rome slowly conquered and annexed neighboring peoples. This slow and steady expansion eventually led to the Romans' domination of the Italian peninsula and the entire Mediterranean Sea, where they conquered the Greeks, Egyptians, and Carthaginians. Military conquests would later help Rome conquer lands as far away as Britain and Iraq. This massive scale and growing populace necessitated advancements in Roman engineering. Aqueducts were constructed, which increased the public's access to water, helped improve public health, and paved the way for Rome's famed bathhouses. A 50,000-mile-long road system was built as well. While made originally for the military, it facilitated the movement of people and ideas throughout the empire. This transmission of ideas and increased contact with diverse cultures also enabled other aspects of Roman culture to evolve. A key to Rome's success and longevity was the empire's inclusion of cultures from the lands they conquered. From the nearby land of Latium, Rome acquired the Latin language, which became the empire's official language and the ancestor to Europe's Romance languages. Romans also adopted cultural aspects from the ancient state of Etruria, including their religion, alphabet, and the spectacle of gladiator combat. However, no other civilization influenced the Romans as much as the ancient Greeks. Their influence is probably most apparent in Rome's art and architecture. Upper-class Romans commissioned paintings and sculptures to imitate Greek art. Greek architectural styles, such as columns, were implemented in Roman structures, such as the Pantheon and Colosseum. One cultural shift in particular that resonated throughout the empire was the rise of Christianity. Originating in the Middle East, the religion found a strong advocate in Constantine I, the first Roman emperor to convert to Christianity. He enabled Rome's transition into a Christian state and encouraged the religion to spread across Europe. By the 4th century, after a lifespan of over a millennium, the Roman Empire declined. Factors including political corruption, economic crises, and class conflict led to the empire's decay from within, while invasions and other military threats caused it to break down from outside. Rome's ability to incorporate diverse cultures, dominate rivals, and adapt political systems to the needs of its people are all lessons to be learned for time eternal.
So that was the video that sums up what we have studied. Next class, we will talk about the fall of the Roman Empire. So your homework would be to write down points of social hierarchies and draw a flowchart depicting it. All right. So with this, I end today's class. Stay home and stay safe. Take care and keep learning.